We are here in central London with brother Leo Mohammed. First of all, brother, before we go further and get to introduction, I would like to find out, have you heard of Agenda 2063?
Yes, very briefly, brother. I have heard of this Agenda 2063, and in a kind of overall basis, I think it's a very good idea. The idea of coalescing everything and bringing all of the different disparate elements within Africa together in the different countries to once and for all create an agenda that's going to take us beyond where we currently are into success and prosperity. I think it's a very good idea. Whether it's workable, whether it's feasible, whether it's actually something that we're going to make happen for real, that remains to be seen. But I certainly like the idea of Agenda 2063.
Thank you. Now, when we look at the development trajectory of Africa, in your own opinion, what do you think is the best way of going about it?
You know, brother, it's very unfortunate that, you know, as Africans and as black people in the diaspora on the continent, we don't seem to appreciate what has happened to us. You know, quite often we talk about the 400 years of the transatlantic so-called slave trade, where we were destroyed as a human reality from 1555 right up to the present day, brought into the Western Hemisphere in the so-called diaspora. And we talk about African colonialism, but we talk about it as if it was kind of like something different and not so devastating, when in reality, colonialism was just another form of enslavement and destruction. And African people, whether we're on the continent or in the diaspora, we have all been totally deconstructed and destroyed, even to the degree of our minds. So something like unity, which Chinese people take for granted, which white people take for granted, which Japanese take for granted, and other races around the world, the Asians and others, all take for granted. This is something that you and I have to be retaught, something that we have to learn, because we have bought into and we've been sold an idea that the way for us to make progress as a people is to integrate ourselves into somebody else's mind, i.e. the European or Eurocentric mindset. And unfortunately, most of our African leaders and most of our people have been conditioned to that direction. And so, you know, brother, it sounds simple, and it sounds, you know, to some people, oh, this is kind of like, you know, quaint and you know, it's too simplistic. But brother, believe me, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who is the foundation of the Nation of Islam, he teaches us, brother, that our unity is more powerful than a nuclear weapon. That our unity is the key, because the idea of the United States of Africa, as postulated by our great brother Kwame Nkrumah, brother, that is the idea. And whether it's, you know, political union, economic union, social union, this is critically important that this becomes the idea of Africans wherever we're found on the planet, Pan-Africanism, so that once again we recognize that we are family wherever we're found on the planet. That alone, once we start thinking like that, recently I believe the Ghanaian president was in the Caribbean and he was in Jamaica, and now they've struck a deal that between Ghana and Jamaica, there are no longer to be visa restrictions. I mean, brother, that is beautiful. That's the kind of thing that needs to happen now all the way across Africa, because all of those borders we know were drawn by Europeans. They're fake, they're false. They are put there deliberately to keep us divided and ruled. And so, brother, if we would really just begin to affect our union, make the African Union a reality, make the United States of Africa a reality, brother, we would solve half of our problems overnight. And then it's about logistics and how we now collectively begin to work together with self-interest. There was a meeting in South Africa House many years ago where I believe it was the deputy head of the African Union was here, and it was a female sister, she was speaking, and the sister said to us, that beautiful sister said to us, she said something, brother, that hit me so hard in my head. She said that every European nation, the Americans and the Australians and the other countries around the world, they all have what's called foreign policy on the African nations. but no African nation had foreign policy on any country outside of. I said, come on, man. Come on, brother. I was in Zimbabwe, and we were being shown around by a member of ZANU-PF, beautiful sister, who explained to us that they were getting medicines from Europe for the Zimbabwean people, and they didn't even check the medicine to see what was in the vials. Come on, man. And so if we would just wake up to the reality that there is a conspiracy to stop Africa from rising, and this has been since colonialism, since our enslavement, it hasn't stopped. It's metamorphed into something that looks like independence or freedom, but in reality we still don't control all of the resources on our continent. We still don't control all of the entities, our money and so on and so forth, and our wealth on the continent, and we've got to take charge of these things. If we do this, brother, if we come together as a people from a grassroots level, this is important, because unfortunately the leaders, quite often, they're in the pocket of Washington or Westminster and these other capital cities and the international bankers. And as long as they are in the pockets of these entities, Africa will never truly be able to grow and develop on the scale and on the level that it could. But Africa, brother, is the future for all of these nations around the world, and we as grassroots people have to begin to recognize this and begin to put pressure on the powers that be within our nation states to make and bring about those changes. And young men like yourself, brother, who are highly intelligent, enterprising people, brother, you got to really come forward now with another level of confidence to show that innovation and change is in your hands, and begin to inspire the young people who are, when I was in Zimbabwe, I mean, I saw some very enterprising young people, brother. When Britain and America and others were basically disenfranchising that nation and destroying their currency with sanctions or whatever, I saw enterprising people, brother, who were going out and hustling and making things happen, and we have that kind of energy. And I would just say, really just to bring this particular answer to an end, we are very close, brother, to a tremendous change, but it's going to take that collective thought process and ultimately that collective action where we stop apologizing for being the original people, for being Africans, for being black people, and start to do now what we see other people take for granted.
And the role of the youth, how can the youth best be involved in this process? Because I personally, and I'm considered a youth myself, I believe that is our future, because we have a different way of thinking. What do you think is the role of the youth, and how can they best leverage the technology, the knowledge that they have, because they have also integrated into the global way of thinking? So how can the youth take part?
Brother, it's all about the youth, in truth, because if the youth are not involved, we have no future. We graduated with the ability to maintain a status quo which is anti-us and against us. So if we are still putting our children into those same institutions and still praying that our children can get into Harvard or get into Eton or get into these kind of places where they're going to come out with a white mind, black skin, white mind, no, that's the wrong approach. So we have to, first and foremost, are genuinely honest about in a future that our youth are going to control. Then we have to start at the grassroots level, building schools and institutions and having an Africa curricula, an Afrocentric idea about history, present day and future. And if we will do that, brother, and start to really educate our children, because believe me, there are so many Africans today on the continent, young people who know nothing of the history, because we have a tradition in African society where they say it's old men for counsel, young men for war. In other words, the elders are supposed to pass down to the young people the history and what happened before, in order that the young people don't make the same mistakes that maybe we made, and that they can skip over or bypass those mistakes and go on to victory. Unfortunately, brother, what's happened is because we've taken the narrative from the Eurocentric curricula, taken the narrative from the Eurocentric world. That's what we've been feeding to our young people. So it's not to say that everything that comes out of Europe, or everything that comes from the white man, or everything that comes from the other aspects of the world that are not African are negative. No. Modern technology, for instance, so much of that is coming from other than Africa, but so much of the component parts to make that modern technology a reality come out of the soil of Africa. And so we can embrace modern technology. We must embrace modern technology, but at the same time we have to embrace it as black people, as Africans, and not necessarily utilize it in the same way in which Europeans or other people utilize it. We must use it toward our own self-interest. We have a unique self-interest. We have a unique character, and we have to begin to bring that character to the fore, because one of the reasons the planet is in the terrible condition it's in is because the African character, the black character, is not uppermost and is not in a position of authority or power. And we must stop shying away from this and thinking that it's all right for white men or Chinese men or Japanese men or other men to be in power, but for the black man, we must be subservient to somebody else.
Any message to the African leaders, especially sitting at the African Union?
You know, brother,
there's a leadership crisis. There is a leadership crisis.
You know, brother, I don't think all of these people who are currently in leadership are bad people. I really don't. I think many of them had aspirations to make change and to bring about a better Africa, but in truth, once they got into the seat of power and they were introduced to the International Monetary Fund, they were introduced to the World Bank, they were introduced to these structural adjustments that they are compelled to bring in and to do and to enforce on our people. Once they're introduced to the machinations of the power brokers who control Washington and Westminster and the United Nations and the permanent 5 of the Security Council, once they're introduced into these arenas, they succumb to the pressure and to the blackmail and to the bribery and to the corruption which they are encouraged to carry out in terms of skimming the wealth out of our nations into the West and keeping our people, the masses of our people, impoverished while their cronies and their little family gets taken care of. And I know that you may think that, you know, the white man is God and that you only are answerable to him, but in the end you're going to discover that you have to recognize that the power, the real power in the universe is now in effect. That power is now in power. It's no longer the white man. The white man's power is finished. I would encourage those to take a close look at America and Mr. Trump and understand the chaos and the confusion that now plagues Washington. I would encourage them to look at Westminster and Mr. Johnson, Boris, and the confusion that now besets the Westminster government and this Brexit and all of the other machinations that are causing the West to look like crazy, confused children, because they are no longer the power brokers. There is another power on the scene, and that power is moving the masses of the people, and those leaders who continue to sell out the masses of the people, they're going to be moved out of the way by the masses of the people if they don't begin to serve the masses of the people. And so I would say to our leaders, you know, it's incumbent on you to really start to recognize that there's a wind change. There is a sea change. This is not business as usual. We cannot continue to rob and steal from Africa, because, you know, we constantly hear about all of this aid that comes into Africa. But according to my understanding, for every £10 or $10 that comes into Africa, maybe 1,000 leaves. This has got to stop, whether it's Europeans or Chinese. You see, we got to now start investing in the masses of our people, in our young people, and put our young people to work in Africa and get the innovation that is in our young people to now come to the fore. And so, you know, I would encourage those leaders to change and to cease from this capitulation to people who you know don't like you. And I heard one brother, I saw something online where one brother was talking about some of these leaders, brother, who they're flying on private jets from Africa into the West. And the champagne that they may be drinking may be worth 200 to 500 pounds a bottle. Not even a white man drinks that, brother. But what they don't understand is that the white man observing you doing that to your own people while your people are impoverished, but you're drinking that. The white man, he knows that you are a chump. He's playing you, and he will supply you with that type of liquor all day long because he knows that you are no good to your own people. But guess what? He will never trust you. It's like the agents and the stool pigeons and the CIA operatives that are all up around in every progressive group in Africa and in the diaspora. They're among us. They got black skin like us, but they're working for the agencies. They're working for the governments. Same to those people. You think that you've arrived. You think that your best friend is that white man who is paying you that little 30 pieces of silver to sell out your people. But understand this, what he knows is that if you will sell out your own people, the rise and the aspiration of your own people, he knows that he can never trust you. And when the time comes, he will be the one who will come and tell us who you were, because he's wicked like that and he wants to see you destroyed. And so I would really encourage those of us who are in positions of authority, positions of power, where our people have put us because our people thought that we were going to bring about change and that we were going to carry out a mandate that the people have given us. I would encourage those leaders to, really change and to become the spiritual human being that you were born and created to be, and observe your own conscience, because as African people, as black people, we have a highly developed conscience. Our very being is God, and we can't do evil without recognizing what we're doing. We're not like Europeans who can Leopold, who can chop off 20 million hands to get people to up rubber production, or murder and slaughter people like Hiroshima and Nagasaki, dropping one bomb, looking at 150,000 people dying immediately and say, "Oh, that's good, let's do it again." We're just not that kind of people. You can't show me the African nation that's ever gone outside and invaded other nations around the world. We just don't do that. We don't operate like that. That's not our nature, it's not our character. And so these corrupt leaders, I would appeal to you, go back to your nature. Go back to your beautiful African nature. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is our leader, teacher and guide in the Nation of Islam, he teaches us that there is no such thing as an irredeemable black man. Every black man is redeemable. Every black man has the potential to change from his wicked ways and become once again a righteous, upstanding human being. So I would encourage these leaders, while you have the power in your hands to make change, because the change that's coming cannot be stopped. And the African people, the children, the youth, they're rising. Don't think that what you see going on in Hong Kong now with the young people there is some far off thing that's going to stay there. It's going to infect the whole planet. Young people are on the rise, and the young people, they're looking to the elders for guidance and for right leadership. But if it's missing, the young people will lead themselves, and then you will have a real problem. And so, that's what I would say to those persons. But I really want to encourage you, brother, to do what you're doing. And I want to come to, are you based in South Africa?
I'm in South Africa and Namibia, but I'm a son of the soil. I am in
Praise be to Allah. Praise be to
Allah.
Allah. Because what we want is a nation without borders. We want to be able to travel. I'm here in the diaspora, but I get a lot of invitations from the continent. Our brothers and sisters want me to come, and I'm looking forward to coming. And I want to go to South Africa, I want to go to Kenya, I want to go back to Zimbabwe, I want to go back to the Gambia, I want to go, all over. I really want to go and visit our people in the Congo, where this fake Ebola virus has been laid on our people. All of these things, brothers and sisters, they're all designed to stop your growth and your development, and you're taking back charge, taking back control of our own destinies. None of it will succeed. Ebola, it's like it's going to be a drop in the ocean when it comes to African liberation and African progression, and how we're going to change the future for ourselves. But we can't go forward in fear. We have to go forward knowing that we can change all of this reality, and we have to, name people and call people out and call out some of these agencies that are operating. And our people have got to wake up and understand that, not everybody who flies in and says that they are with the World Health Organization, that they're for us and they're really genuine. You've got to start looking sideways at these people, because they're not there to help us, brothers and sisters. Think about all of the years that they've been aiding Africa.
All these years.
And what has happened except regression, going backwards. So come on, it's a time for us to wake up. We are our best friends, and we are the ones who love ourselves, and we're the ones who love one another. When I see you, brother, when I see black people, I see my family. I don't care where you come from on the planet. I don't care, where you are, in South America, the Caribbean, Africa, the Isles of the Pacific. We're family. We're one family. And the white man recognizes his family all over the world. No matter where they are, white people recognize white people and take care of white people. We've got to do the same, without apology. No apology for this. It is called self-interest. It's called self-love. It's called self-growth and development. And that's what's needed now in 2019 going into 2020. So I would really encourage you and those who are watching this to let's get on, man. Let's build our global nation without borders.
Let's do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
So much, brother.